people of the internet, I am Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir, and welcome to another edition of Gundam Mania, my own little corner of the KaijuNoir channel where I can talk about anything and everything that has to do with my favorite anime franchise of all time, Gundam. But not just any other Gundam, no, instead, in celebration of its 40th anniversary, I want to take the opportunity to talk about the original classic that started it all, Mobile Suit Gundam, which was released on April 7th, 1979. And I decided to invite my good friend along to help me explore just what made this series so great in the first place, to see how well it stands in this day and age. And so I like to give a big introduction to my good friend, TitanGoji.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am in fact alive. I've just been really busy lately.
Oh yeah, I definitely know how you feel, man. It's like ever since G-Fest, it's just been like just one project after another, whether it's like YouTube related or not. What was very interesting about, bringing you along to take a look at the original Gundam 79, as I would prefer to call it from here on out, is that you actually had never watched Gundam until I recommended Gundam 79 to you, is that right?
Absolutely. I knew next to nothing about Gundam other than cool robots and, war stuff.
Yeah, because if there's one thing you should know about Gundam before going in is that, with a few exceptions here and there, the main message behind Gundam is war is bad, even though we make it look so cool.
Absolutely. And god damn it, will they make a profit off of it.
Yeah. It's like, war is bad. Now purchase this model kit to keep about this death machine to keep our franchise afloat. Now
0080 in a nutshell.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny. 0080 was sort of like a meta commentary on the franchise's existence. So yeah, ever since I started talking about Gundam online, my recommendation has always been for newcomers who are interested in getting into Gundam is to start with the original series that started it all. In a way, like being a Godzilla fan, you and I being primarily Godzilla fans, that the fan base has a lot of like respect and admiration for the original 1954 Godzilla. And so whenever someone is interested in getting into Godzilla, most fans would usually recommend the original one to get them started in, as it's sort of like the installment that set the groundwork for all future Godzilla films to follow. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a great idea that whenever you're getting into like a new franchise, it's always like a great idea to like go all the way back to where it started. I mean, not just Godzilla, but like other anime, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh yeah,
actually, like just cartoons in general, like Transformers.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, sure, in many cases, there are a lot of future installments that do things better than the original installment, but it's good to see where the franchises came from in order to get a better appreciation for what was soon to follow afterwards.
Very true.
So, but in the case of Gundam, I always saw Gundam 79 and Godzilla 54 as almost like similar products and similar pieces of entertainment, where both of them launched gigantic decade-spanning franchises that all borrow or take elements from the original installment that started it all. And like Godzilla 54, I always thought that Gundam 79 was a piece of media that always stood the test of time and could be enjoyed by any generation in any sort of context, regardless of its age, if the audience is willing to, or if the audience does not have a sort of bias against older pieces of entertainment. Because I have come across those kind of people where it's like, oh, this movie's in black and white, I'm not interested, or oh, this animation is really old and dated, so I'm not interested in seeing that. But I feel like for people who have like an open mind towards all sorts of entertainment, regardless of its age, I feel like it's super easy to get into Gundam, and that's pretty much why it's always been my go-to recommendation. And it's, in a way, the TitanGoji here was sort of like my guinea pig to test that theory.
Oh yeah, and I also think it's important to note that that movies like Godzilla and shows like Gundam were like huge game changers in Japanese entertainment, which would eventually like have a worldwide influence. Whereas Godzilla pretty much like innovated the use of suitmation and like more like usage of practical effects when it like came to filmmaking. Gundam pretty much innovated the whole like real robot subgenre of mecha, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. It's sort of an interesting situation with Gundam, where unlike Godzilla, which sort of became like this huge pioneer for all future tokusatsu-related media to follow, where once Godzilla laid the groundwork, you had stuff like Ultraman and Kamen Rider and Sentai all showing up. Meanwhile, with Gundam was not the first one to try out these sort of darker, more serious themes. From what I can recall in my research, I know that there have been other giant robot shows that slowly started getting to more complex drama-fueled storylines and deeper characters. And Gundam wasn't so much like the first one to do these sort of ideas, but it definitely was the one that left a big enough impact to where other studios came and wanted to copy those ideas. And I feel like it also was like a huge innovator in terms of like sort of solidifying and inventing the real robot genre. Like back in the day, you had, I believe, stuff like what's called the Robot Romance trilogy, where you had Combattler 5, Voltes 5, Daimos. I believe Brave Raideen also had a hand in creating more complex dramas, several of which were actually made by Gundam's creator Tomino. And so I guess he took his experiences from these different super robot shows, which are still sort of like primarily aimed at young kids who are watching these robots fight the next monster of the week and, saving the day at the end. And he ended up creating this space opera, this very complex, lore-heavy, character-filled space drama, and was able to take a huge risk and take the robot anime genre to the next level. And from that point, he started a trend that other shows like Macross or Dougram would soon sort of build on.
Oh yeah, totally. I also remember watching that one NHK documentary about like the making of 0079, and Tomino did talk about like working on those previous mecha shows as well, and how he have some influence like from those shows that he worked on as they did like end up being carried over into the making of Gundam.
Right. This just reminded me. It made me, before going into the sort of like the things that led to Gundam's eventual creation, I really wish I would have started this review with, "Hey, TitanGoji, did you know that unlike other mecha shows, Gundam is about the characters?" I swear, if you want to find an easy way to rile up a mecha fan, you got to say those magic words. Yeah,
why actually focuses on the characters.
Did you know that
unlike all the other Godzilla movies, Shin Godzilla focuses on the characters?
Do you know that unlike other giant robot shows, Evangelion is about the characters?
Evangelion is the first true mecha anime. Evangelion is the first ever anime to ever exist.
Evangelion is the be-all, end-all of anime. Meanwhile, there's like every single old school mecha fan who's just like, "Ooh!" It's really hilarious because, like, in fact, if looking back, it is possible, even with like something as super basic and simple as Mazinger Z, it's technically about the characters, because at the end of the day, you wouldn't be watching Mazinger Z if it weren't for the very cartoony, charismatic characters like Dr. Hell or Koji Kabuto.
Speaking of Go Nagai, I also feel like not only some of the elements from Gundam, but also like from like other mecha anime like Evangelion, kind of do borrow some of its like tonal themes from Go Nagai's Devilman, where it is a cautionary tale about mankind destroying itself, but it does have like this anti-war theme going on about it.
That is true, yeah. I would feel like, I can't say for certain, but it does feel like Gundam was one of the first, if not the first anime to ever sort of build this sort of, environment where there are sort of good people on both sides of the conflict, and how nothing is clearly black and white. It's not like, again, going back to Mazinger Z, it's not like this is a young, brash, hot-blooded teenager going against this evil dictator like monster of a human being, or some evil alien who wishes to wipe out all human life. Rather, you just got these sort of people who are fighting for what they believe in. And in our case, we are following people who are on the side of one side of the conflict. So we're seeing the majority of the conflict through their eyes only, and through that side alone, for the most part.
Oh, yeah. And although I haven't seen like a whole lot of other Gundam shows aside from 0079, but from what I've seen, like in 0080 War in the Pocket, that element does get amplified, where it pretty much becomes like the main focus, like in some shows.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, in the case of like 0080, which you brought up just now, that the main character is mostly seeing everything through the side of the opposite side of who we normally follow in this original continuity.
Oh yeah.
And I would say that for anybody who wants to get into Gundam, and you're watching the original 79, there is a debate between certain people whether you should watch the original series or the movie trilogy. Now, for the sake of this review, we are TitanGoji and I are mainly going to be talking about the original series that lasted from April 7th, 1979 to January 26th of the following year. And the thing is, it's like I've always had this sort of a bias towards movie compilations, whether or not they have any new animation or new content to add to the story. It's just me, but it's like if a story was made for a multi-episodic format, that's the format that I choose to go with. I choose to go with like what it was initially intended for, similar to like Gundam Unicorn, where I'm more interested in seeing the 7-episode miniseries as opposed to the 20 or so episode televised version of it. It's just, for me, it's like, because I'm a person who studied movies in college, to me it's like a movie compilation to me is not a real movie. It's just a series of events sort of patchwork together in the vague to make a vague semblance of a movie. That's just I admit it's my own biases coming through, but for me, I'll always recommend the original series, and having binge watched through it all, I don't really see the complaint that other people have, where people complain that the original 43 episode series is too long for certain people, and that it's so much more convenient to watch the movie trilogy. Is it shorter? Sure. But I still feel like there's a lot of content to enjoy within that 43 episode series that I would not recommend skipping over. How do you feel, man, about that?
Oh yeah, I totally feel the exact way. I do feel like this is a show could be like experienced in its entirety, and then you have companies like William Winkler Productions that would make compilation films of Fist of the North Star and give it the worst English dub possible.
No, my muscles! I will say the 2001 English dub of the original Mobile Suit Gundam was handled far better than it had any right to be, I feel like. At least, like, back in the day, say what you will about, like, 90s, early 2000s era dubbing, but for me, I really enjoyed the dubs for a lot of the OVAs, the Gundam Wing, G Gundam, and yeah, I thought the dub for the original Mobile the original Gundam 79 was perfectly suitable, especially if you're someone who just isn't into reading subtitles. For the sake of me, being a busy person, sometimes I like to have episodes play in the background while I'm doing other things, whether it's like editing a project or studying for something or other. But yeah, I really enjoy the voices. I know for a lot of people, it's like almost sacrilege to prefer English dubs over the Japanese dubs, but it's like I feel like this is a case where it's very suitable in either language. The show is still suitable in either language.
English dubs aren't bad. Y'all are just mean. Actually, in fact, I did watch 0079 like with the English dub. Yeah, I haven't watched it subbed yet. Although the English dub was the only one I could find on YouTube, so I just kind of felt that was more convenient.
Yeah. What's really funny? It's that I did want to share this, and that was like my history with Gundam 79, where I understand that it was available for a very short time on American television on Toonami, which is where other shows like G Gundam and Gundam Wing got their start. However, I was, for whatever reason, I never caught the Gundam 79 on Toonami. Just for whatever reason, it was always like out of my reach. Maybe it aired too late for me. Maybe, I don't know, it aired past my bedtime as a little child. I don't know, but I never caught it on TV. However, do you want to know what my original exposure to Gundam 79 was?
What exactly?
It was the PlayStation 2 game Mobile Suit Gundam Journey to Jaburo, which was a video game adaptation of like the first 20 or so episodes from the very first episode all the way to where they face off against Char in his like aquatic Zegok mobile suit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Also, what wasn't Gundam 0079 like taken off the air after 9/11 happened?
Yeah, a lot of people like to say it was 9/11, but from what other sources I've heard, it wasn't exactly that. It was just around the same time. Actually, it aired in like July 23rd, 2001, and apparently it did not get very high ratings, which honestly I'm not surprised, because after showing like relatively modern anime, 90s anime like G Gundam and Gundam Wing, going into a 1979 series in 2001 was a very bizarre choice in my opinion. I assume...
I could definitely see why it wouldn't like perform as well. This also reminds me of when Fist of the North Star was brought over to American television, and yes, in case you can't tell, I love Fist of the North Star. But okay, so Manga Entertainment did the English dub for Fist of the North Star when it was brought over to the U.S. However, it was always put on like much later time slots, like during weekends. And I believe this was around the same time as Dragon Ball Z, which was also like brought over to the U.S. at the time. And while that show did get knocked around for its animation being dated, Fist of the North Star got it worse, and that's like a much older series.
I see then. I guess for once Gundam was removed either due to a combination of 9/11, the aftermath of 9/11, where more violent television series were taken off the air, or it was due to low ratings. Gundam 79 sort of like disappeared off of television, but it still made appearances on DVD. Up until Bandai of America or Bandai Entertainment stopped producing DVDs, and it was sort of like unavailable for a while unless you were someone who had access to like VHSs or DVDs or the novelizations, which I hear were actually localized in America. I could be wrong though. But, a couple of years ago, another company called Right Stuff Inc. released the whole series in 2 volume cases on Blu-ray. And it was a godsend for many Gundam fans to get to own it on high definition. And so the series is widely available now thanks to Right Stuff Inc. So you don't have to sacrifice an arm and a leg and spend I don't know, hundreds of dollars just to get those rare DVDs from Bandai Entertainment now. And
somehow I have one of those DVDs, yet I can't even remember what. I believe I might have had it since I was 2, 3, 4. I don't know exactly. I remember digging through stuff in my room, and I find this Gundam DVD that I don't even remember having, and I never watched it for some reason.
Maybe you never got around to seeing it because maybe someone in your family found out how valuable it was and sold it on eBay.
Maybe one of my family members used the time stone to look into the future and see how much it would be worth.
True, that is a possibility. I won't write that off. And I guess one last thing I want to mention was it was around I want to say when I was in high school when I got back into Gundam, and I remember rewatching the original Gundam Wing and G Gundam, since those were the shows I remembered from my childhood. And it was at that point that I wanted to go back to the beginning and see where it all started. And with the help of the internet, through some mysterious websites that I will not name here, I managed to watch the original Gundam in all its glory. And at that point, I jumped from Gundam to Zeta Gundam to Double Zeta, and then to moved on to the OVAs and stuff. So at which point, watching it was as nice as it was to watch G Gundam and Gundam Wing. I feel like the original Gundam really made me want to see everything this franchise had to offer. So moving on to the actual series itself, what is very interesting about this series is, despite the fact that it was made to be it was like the very first series, and for all intents and purposes this could have been the one and only Gundam show to have ever been made. This one just drops you right in the middle of this large conflict. It's established that it takes place in the year Universal Century 0079. At some point in time, the AD era ended and the UC era began. Humanity lives in space, and already there's a huge war between the Principality of Zeon, which is this small cluster of colonies all fighting for independence, against these sort of tyrannical, against the not so much tyrannical, but against the harsh strength of the harsh rule of the Earth Federation. And so we just see these group of characters like Amuro, Kai, Frau Hayato. All of them are just caught in the middle of this great conflict. And at first I thought, maybe this would have been confusing to a lot of people to just drop people right in the middle of this gigantic war between the colonies and the Earth Federation, between Zeon and the Earth Federation. But I think what I'm really admire about the storytelling in this anime is how they're always reminding you at the beginning of each episode. They try to keep you up to date on what's been going on. For the first 9 or 10 or so episodes, they kind of give you the same prologue every time, where it's humanity moved into space and then shit got real.
Yeah, pretty much. And I also want to add that that the main character Amuro pretty much takes up a good majority of screen time. So really 0079, it's more about Amuro and how this war is affecting him.
Right, yeah, definitely. I do want to get into that a little bit later. But yeah, for the most part, you do see everything through the eyes of Amuro, who is pretty much your standard, young, energetic, very highly emotional teenage boy. And, he's a very relatable character.
Highly emotional teenage boy, just like Evangelion.
Because obviously Gundam 79 copied Evangelion, because after all, Evangelion is the end-all be-all of mecha anime. Am I right, TitanGoji?
Absolutely.
Clearly, Gundam 79 saw into the future and stole all its ideas from Evangelion. I mean, think about it. A father who creates a giant robot and has his son pilot it to kill and save the world? So, one thing I did want to mention was, it's interesting to see how this was a very serialized anime, which I don't know if serialized anime was so much of a thing in 1979, but given my limited exposure to older anime at the time, like Devilman or Mazinger Z, it seemed like most of these shows felt very episodic, where most plots are introduced and resolved by the end of each episode. So to have a show where it's vital to watch every single episode in order to get the full story, it makes a lot of sense that they would repeat a lot of these sort of introductions at the beginning of each episode, so that if you're someone who's just tuning into episode 5 or whatever, there's that reminder saying, this is the future, and this is the situation that's happening, and if it's like episode 20 or episode 30, there'll be a new version saying, this is what our characters have been through at the moment.
Previously on Mobile Suit Gundam.
Pretty much, yeah. There was, it was sort of like they did those whole previously without it wasn't like so much like it wasn't so much of those like kind of previously where they tell you exactly what happened in the last episode. They're just telling you what happened in the last 10 or so episodes. So I feel like they really try to plan ahead in case someone is dropping by episode 25 or whatever. One thing I also want to mention is in terms of this world building, they do give you a good look at the Zeon and the Earth Federation forces, and they do show that there are good people and bad people on both sides of the conflict. Occasionally you'll get some very cartoonishly evil Zeon soldiers, but every once in a while you'll see some Zeon soldiers that are just decent people fighting for what they believe in. One moment that stuck out was there was this mother and her son. They got off of White Base, and she wanted to take her son and raise him in her husband's old hometown. And once she sees the Zeon soldiers were nice enough to leave them some food and say, hey, it's going to get dangerous out here, better move as quickly as possible.
Yeah, like I like there's like I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but man, I really don't know how to describe it. But it's like whenever you see moments like that where it's like the supposed bad guy or bad guys do like good things, like it adds like it adds
conflict.
It adds more.
Like you feel more conflicted about wanting to see them lose.
Well, I mean, there's that, but it kind of adds like another layer of humanism in a sense.
True, yeah, definitely. And the reason why the Zeon soldiers are fighting isn't so much a bad cause if you think about it. It's sort of like, it reminds me kind of like the American Revolution, where the American colonies were fighting against the British Empire for the sake of independence, and that's sort of what they're doing here, because they feel like they're being taken advantage of by the Earth Federation, and it just so happens that the Zabi family sort of took advantage of that and built a world-conquering sort of empire on top of that by taking advantage of that. In a way, it's sort of like this is essentially like World War II in space with giant robots, basically, with the Zabi family pretty much becoming like sort of Nazi regime, and you can easily tell Tomino was taking a lot of. Tomino was of the generation that probably had nothing to do with World War II, but being the generation right after World War II that was still very much so affected by the events of the previous generation.
Oh yeah, like I can also see like how much World War II has influenced like Gundam 0079, especially in the designs of the mobile suits themselves. Like the Zaku definitely appear more military-like, whereas like say the RX-78 kind of. I mean, I know it's not exactly World War II, but the RX-78 does kind of resemble that of a samurai.
Yeah. And in a way, its bright colors sort of, even though, those primary colors of white, blue, yellow, red, those are primary colors that have been featured in a lot of other super robot and giant robot anime in the past. But it feels like these sorts of colors are colors that you would probably associate with something with like maybe like the American flag or the British flag or something like that, as opposed to the red and blacks and whites of the colors that Zeon would use that you would use.
And the obvious comparison between World War II and the Zeon, or is that the Zeon? I mean, they definitely look like Nazis.
Oh yeah. It's fact, whenever I describe Gundam to anybody who wants to get into Gundam, I just pretty much say like, yeah, it's like a teenager with a giant robot that fights space Nazis.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know what? It's really funny now that I think about it. If you're someone who has like no concept of Gundam, it's kind of awkward, especially in this day and age, to show like, because at the end of the day, like the Zeons, they look really cool. The Federation stuff looks cool. And it's also kind of funny if, in fact, I can imagine someone who has like Zeon decorations, because let's say you're a kid like what was the name of the kid from Gundam 0080?
Okay, I do know he was called Al for short.
Yeah. Okay, Albert. He was, a fan of the Zeon stuff. He just thought the Zeons looked cool, especially their Zaku mobile suits. So I'm now wondering, what if someone who had like Zeon decorations, like a Zeon flag or Zeon gunpla or Zeon cosplay, and whenever he just goes seek Zeon, everyone just assumes he's a real life Nazi. It's like it would suck to show yourself as a Zeon fan in this day and age in real life.
Are you familiar with Adolf Hitler?
That's the thing. I love that scene, by the way, where the father, like the main guy behind the Zabi family, he's telling his son Giran, he's like, you know what? You sound an awful lot like that Hitler fellow, and things didn't end well for him.
Yeah.
Because at that point, he's there. Like they hinted at it that if everything goes well with the Principality of Zeon, they would pretty much go into like eugenics and that kind of shit.
Oh yeah.
Whereas we're going to create the master race of space people. So, we talked a bit about the world.
German science is the best in the world.
Space German scientist is the greatest in the space science. Zeon engineering is the greatest in the world. Oh, I love JoJo. Let's see. So, going into like the actual plot of Gundam, it pretty much goes at a relatively smooth pace throughout. For me, it never really felt like there were any like filler episodes or stuff that felt like they could have been easily cut out. If they could be cut out, I feel like that would take away some really good world building, or at least some interesting character dynamics.
And I definitely feel like the whole like world building aspect of Gundam is definitely like one of its like biggest factors.
Oh, totally, yeah. One of my favorite episodes, I'm not sure if you can cut this episode out or not, but one of my favorite episodes was the one where Amuro reunites with his mother, and not only
I really like that episode too.
Like, not only do you get a chance to see some like really asshole-ish Earth Federation people who just like invade people's homes and just like start living there for free. In a way, it kind of reminds me of how like during the American Revolution, a bunch of redcoats would come in and take advantage of the New Englanders, sleeping in their houses, eating their food and whatnot, acting like they own the place, taking advantage of their power.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about that episode is how you start to see how this war has been affecting Amuro.
Yeah, totally. Even though there's a lot of episodes that focus on Amuro's development from a grief-stricken teenager to a very hot-headed, young, confused individual to a battle-hardened soldier, you see the sort of like the results of that character progression through the eyes of his mother, where his mother, she's just absolutely horrified that he's a soldier. And it's like, it's really hard, you can't really say that she's selfish, because at the end of the day, that's her child. Her child entering the battlefield is like the last thing she would want for Amuro. And so the fact that he is so willing to take another person's life is such a shock to her. It's a complete, this revelation when he's protecting everybody from these Zeon soldiers. She's just utterly devastated, even though, despite the fact she's like so conflicted from herself. Like, even with Bright Noah's words of encouragement saying like what he's doing is for the good of the Earth Federation and I'm proud to have him as part of my team, she, like, by the end of the episode, she is just torn apart by this situation she has no control over.
Yeah.
Yeah, those sort of elements where, shit gets real, like emotional. That is like, those are like the little things that come together. There are many moments like that all come together to make such a wonderful universe to explore in. And I'm very glad that eventually. Sorry, go ahead.
And it also does a really good job showing how there's definitely a tragic side to this world.
Yeah. Like earlier before I was talking about the mother who wanted to raise her child in her husband's hometown, and by the end of the episode she finds out the hometown, her husband's hometown is fucking gone. And another one episode that I'm reminded of is Kai's episode. If you remember, there was like a Zeon spy who sneaks on White Base, which is like the big military base that all of our main characters travel on. And she leaves her younger brother and sister behind, which, previously she was forced to be a surrogate mother figure for her younger siblings. Eventually, things do not end well with that girl, and you never find out what happens. You never know what happens to those siblings. You get it. She mentions that they know how to take care of themselves, but we, the audience, don't know that. So for all we know, they're screwed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and it all comes down to the fact that if there are definite stakes involved with this series, and I love I love the English tagline at the end of every episode. Who will survive? Because they prove it time and time. They prove it time and time again. It's just like this can be anyone's game. Anyone can bite the dust at any moment. Sure, there are characters with certain plot armor, but they do a good enough job at suspending your disbelief and thinking, yeah, this could be like Amuro's last stand against the Zeon forces, or anyone else's for that matter. And
if any character name appears in the title of the episode, something bad is going to happen.
Most definitely, man.
Is this like completely spoiler free, or are we going to get into spoilers sometime? Or
that's a very
spoilers whenever?
That's a very good question. So I want to save the spoilers for when we get deep into the character stuff, because right now I'm thinking that sticking to something very general based, and once we go into, we can leave a spoiler section once we go into the characters and stuff.
Okay.
So let's see. We talked about the world building. We talked about the stakes involved. Production-wise, I did want to bring up the music because, as much as I mentioned how this story, feels very timeless, the music does give you a strong sensation that, yes, this is a product of the 70s, and yes, this is something that just came out in the wake of Star Wars. And for me, I don't mind that at all. I love the 70s-ness of this production.
Oh, same here, definitely. I remember describing Gundam to some of my friends by pretty much saying it's like Star Wars but with giant robots
and more 70s, because the funny thing about Star Wars is it was considered unconventional for the time for them to rely on a classic orchestral score, whereas every other sort of sci-fi...
Whereas here in Gundam, it's basically disco music.
Yes, it's all disco, it's techno, it's, sometimes you get some brass, some like military march occasionally, but yeah, there's a lot of like that, one of my favorite themes is the one that was like, meow, 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 meow.
Yeah, that's, I love that little tune.
Or there's another one where it's like, it kind of turns into like a 50s sci-fi film, like, when things get intense.
Theremin.
Yes, the theremin, right. They bust out the theremin for that. I love it because you don't see that anymore. It's like, it would look weird in this day and age, but it's perfect for Gundam.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, like, they do rely on like the traditional instrumentals whenever there's stuff that's more like military focused, and it works there as well. Char's theme I absolutely love, where they use that trumpet, they go. And even though it's technically Char's theme, they use it for Char and Amuro and whenever like the action just ramps up, and it just gets your blood flowing, gets your heart pounding. You're like, yeah.
I believe I may have told you this, but I actually got a speeding ticket while listening.
I hope you didn't turn into Char and all of a sudden you decide to just go on a big chase. Like, if only like your car was pink. It's like, you can't catch me because I'm pink. These cops are going to learn not to mess with anything that's pink.
3 times faster than the regular car.
Than the green ones. And
Car as the boy.
I ain't got friends. I got Zaku's. Sig Zeon. One last thing I want to mention about the music is the intro and the outro. Again, the intro.
Legendary.
Yo, of course.
Legendary. It's definitely up there with, actually both the opening and the ending songs are up there when it comes to like my personal like favorite anime music.
Wow, really?
Yeah, like the opening for 079, it's almost like this like this huge like anthem.
True, yeah.
That's it. And I also feel like a bunch of 70s anime at the time kind of had that same feeling where it's
it's very cheerful, very upbeat, almost like very heroic.
Oh yeah, and you can definitely see that in other anime like Devilman, Mazinger, Kashan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's almost like sort of like I can imagine this theme song existing in universe as like sort of this like maybe like propaganda piece, like if you remember Captain America, the first Avenger, where there was like this big Captain America, a song about Captain America to get people like to support the military and buying war bonds and fighting for the right cause and all that stuff. I can imagine this theme song being used to symbolize the work that the white base team is going through, and it's like here like remember folks, remember to cheer for the white base and support the Earth Federation force.
Buy our model.
Buy our model kits, folks. You're like, screw war bonds, it's model kits. It's really, yeah, this theme song, Tobe Gundam, or Fly Gundam, this is a truly iconic song that has been, sort of entrenched deep in the heart of Japanese pop culture, to where even if someone had never watched Gundam in their life, they at least know Gundam, they know Amuro, they know Char, and they know the theme song. And it reminded me of this Gundam commercial. I forgot what it was advertising, but I think it was advertising maybe like a Blu-ray release or some sort of like anniversary thing about Gundam. And it's just these regular Japanese people going about their daily lives, singing the Gundam song under their breath. Moe agare, moe agare. It was like very touching, and it's like, it's one of those simple tunes that just sticks in a lot of people's heads to this day. It's sort of like
I actually find myself doing that occasionally.
Nice. It was essentially this generation's Cruel Angels thesis. Because again, in a little hint, given because I live in Japan, I've lived in Japan for the last couple of years. I can definitely tell you that. We know there are people who have never watched Evangelion. Everyone knows the theme song. Everyone knows what Evangelion is, and everyone knows the theme song. Let's see. And as for the ending theme, I'm not so much of a fan of like slow ballads, but I can definitely appreciate the beauty of the ending song Amuro. And it's it's very
it's definitely like a very like slow and beautiful piece. Like it's definitely, well, for lack of a better term, the ending song of an anime.
Oh yeah, I wonder if this one set the standard for every like ending theme for all future anime, because it's like, have you seen that meme where it's like anime intro, it's all crazy and loud, anime outro, and it's just people like sitting in a quiet area.
I'm waiting so long.
And there's not much I personally have to say about the ending theme, but yeah, it is very soothing, very relaxing, and it almost kind of represents the downtime that these characters have in between these hectic battles.
Oh yeah.
And it also hurts the more, like, ever since a certain character bites the dust, it's always a bit it's always a little heart-wrenching to see him appear in the outro as well.
Oh yeah.
Also, it's very interesting to note that I believe this was the only Gundam series that ever had the same intro and outro throughout for the duration of the entire series, because once we get to Zeta Gundam, then they do the sort of tradition of changing the theme song mid-season or mid-series.
Yeah, because I can definitely imagine like hearing the same opening like over and over for like a long period of time. I can imagine that being a bit tiresome, so it would make sense. It would make sense to like change it, but Fly Gundam is such a great song that I never got tired of it.
Oh yeah, you can never get tired of that song, even if you're someone who doesn't like even if you're someone who doesn't like cheerful, bubbly, heroic, lighthearted songs. It's like there's something about that song alone that just gets your foot tapping. It's like, yeah, I can get into this.
Oh yeah.
As for the animation, moving on to the animation, I will say that, yeah, it definitely is a product of its time, of course, and it's one of those things that, you just have to accept if you want to get into the series. But I still think that in comparison to, like, the Mazinger Z and Devilman anime, which was probably produced, I want to say, like, 3 or 4 years prior, this show was probably, like, really, really ambitious. Not only super ambitious, but, like, very advanced for its time. This was, like, the best that 70s era animation could get. And once you jump to Zeta Gundam, there's definitely a huge leap in quality. But even then, like on its own standards, in comparison to other anime at the time, Mobile Suit, the original Gundam 79, does like so much with its budget, and it's almost like it's very impressive to see what they can do with just how much they're able to perform in so many different environments, so many different mobile suits, and it's still very exciting to watch. In fact, like, I would definitely get more excited over watching a Gundam fight than I would with like a Mazinger Z fight, given how stiff some of the animation and how the fights can progress in that show.
Oh yeah, and also, considering the fact that it's set during the middle of a space war.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. If you're someone who's a fan of Star Wars, there's always that sort of element there, if you enjoy the sci-fi settings, the more countryside settings, or even some more like oceanic air settings. There's something there for everyone in terms of like those different styles and situations the characters find themselves in. Occasionally, the Gundam itself does go off-model occasionally as a result of the era it was made. In fact, there are several animation errors where certain pieces of a Gundam are uncolored. One error that pops up occasionally is the unpainted hands, where sometimes the Gundam's hands are white, sometimes they're black, sometimes they're gray.
And then there are other times where the Gundam would have a very tiny head.
Yes, sometimes it would have like a very wide chest. Sometimes it would have a very squished appearance. Let's see. Oh, another occasional error I've noticed is, you know how character designs like Bright Noah and Mirai, their eyes are not colored in like the rest of the other characters. But there are like 2 occasions where I saw each character having white in their eyes. Usually it's it's really weird, I will say that.
Yeah.
Like, I think in a few cases for Noah or Bright, they have like a big, like an intense close-up on his face, and that's when they would put the white eyes there. Even then, it's still kind of disturbing, because it's like, oh, I'm already used to the other weird eyes, don't show me this now. It's like seeing, have you ever seen pictures of Krillin from Dragon Ball Z with white eyes?
Yes.
It looks like it's the same sort of unnerving feeling that I get from that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so used to you like not having eyes whatsoever.
Another instance where I've noticed sort of an error that resulted as due to it being a product of its time was occasionally there's like a spaceship that is flying through space, and the animation cell that has the spaceship, they just take the animation cell with the spaceship and slide it across a space backdrop. Unfortunately, there's like you can tell especially on the Blu-ray, there's dust on the animation cell, so when the spaceship is flying across the space backdrop, you can see the dust seemingly flying with the ship as well. It's like, yeah, well, what could you do?
If only I was watching this on a much older TV.
That is true. It's kind of the same feeling I get when you're watching a Godzilla film and you can see the string. You can clearly now see the strings holding up certain props or costumes or characters.
Oh yeah, that also reminds me. There's a shot in the original Japanese version of Son of Godzilla, not the version, but the Japanese version,
mm-hmm.
where when Godzilla is like beating the crap out of like all these
Kamekaris.
I guess. I'm trying to figure out the plural for that. I was about
Kamakarises. The giant mantises.
Yeah, there's a shot where you can actually see like the ceiling of the studio set.
Yes, I saw that one. So it's like, oh my god. It's like they zoom out, but the cameraman zoomed out for half a second too much, and yeah, you can see like where the island backdrop ends and the studio ceiling begins.
Yeah, and there's also that one shot in Godzilla vs. Gigan where Anger is like shove his face into like the bus stop. You can see like someone's hand like holding Anger's.
Oh. Oh dear. This is not really an error so much, more of an editing error. But in an episode of Power Rangers, there was, or in the Sentai Ju Ranger, there was a scene where a child was made giant size, and so the Megazord has to protect this giant Japanese kid from the monster. They didn't use that plot for Power Rangers, but for 1 second you can see a random giant Japanese kid hiding behind the Megazord. They didn't exactly 100% cut all of that footage out. You gotta love production errors. Despite its how would you call it, faults, one of the biggest I guess you can say one of the biggest positives for watching Gundam in this day and age in high definition is being able to appreciate the bright colors that they have on display. Everything is very bright, it's vivid. There's a lot of neon. They love to use neon colors, especially like bright neon pink a lot for like the lasers, the lights, the mobile suits themselves, like Char's Zaku. Everything just like pops out really nice, but it's not like overly saturated. Everything just sort of blends well together. It's not until like Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta do we get some like very high contrasting dark and neon colors. Here, everything just sort of is like the entire color palette sort of like blends together very well. And there are some truly beautiful sequences. I think the best animated sequence is probably like the sort of pseudo dream sequences between Lala and Amuro.
Oh yeah.
And Amuro, like Lala's final scene in the series is like, truly a work of art in and of itself.
Absolutely. I can definitely agree with you there.
So the last thing I want to bring up are the giant robots themselves, because even though this is a show that's the very first show to be about the characters, unlike the robots, this show still brings a lot of damn good giant robot action. And of course, you can't have some damn good giant robot action without some damn good giant robots themselves. It's a very interesting choice, what happened with the original Gundam, where originally it was meant to have a very realistic, mostly flat gray color scheme, but due to the sponsors of the show, which was a toy company, they wanted a brightly colored robot because, that was the trends of the time. And so they went...
Sell merchandise,
merchandise where the real money is made! And so, but I feel like the way they handled the colors on the original Gundam, it's not too intrusive. You can tell they were trying to be as minimal as possible. They made it mostly white because I assume that was the closest to its original gray color scheme. And they centered most of the color on its chest. And I feel like the way it's designed, I love it because I'm a fan of simplistic yet iconic imagery. It's like, it's simple, it's clean, it's straightforward, it's to the point, you instantly remember it. You see a Gundam, you know that it is a Gundam. From the red high heels, the blue chest, the red chin, the V fin, the iconic V fin, even the little black marks across its mouth plate is enough to make it all more distinguished. It's like, it's simple, but yet there's so many intricate details all around the original Gundam that makes it so special. There's something about it that pops. There's something about it that just works. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
There's like a lot of beauty. There's like a lot of intricacies within its simplistic approach to mecha, to this type of mecha. It's also fitting how I love the contrast between how the Gundam is designed and how the rest of the Zeons are designed, where the Zeon mobile suits, where the Zeon mobile suits all have very round, soft edges, almost no, like a very soft, round, almost no sharp edges. Everything, some of them are more like egg shaped. They all have
actually, you know what? I did not notice that until you just mentioned it.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Because if you look at the original Gundam, it's very boxy. It's very square-like. It's very rectangular. There's a lot of rectangular cylinders that compose its arms and bodies. Yeah.
The shape of evil.
It's square, it's pointy, there's a lot of sharp angles everywhere. Meanwhile, you look at the Zeon suits and they're all very rounded, very bulky. Most of them have darker colors, and it's a very nice contrast that I didn't really notice until this most recent viewing. And it's something that sort of gets lost in future Gundam shows, that contrast.
Yeah, and also going back to that one NHK documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I they talked about how they always intended for the Zaku to have the Cyclops eyes, which I believe it is definitely the most distinct feature of the Zaku is the Cyclops eye. There's something very hypnotizing about this emotionless void of nothing but just a single light.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do agree that it's that eye, once that eye turns on, once that eye starts looking left and right and catches our protagonist's attention, you kind of have that oh fuck moment.
Oh, yeah.
I know at this point you have only watched, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point you've only watched the original Gundam series and a lot of the 80s, 90s OVAs that take place around the 1 year war, am I correct?
Oh yeah, I've seen 0079, War in the Pocket, Stardust Memory, 8th Mobile Suit Team, and a little bit of The Origin.
The Origin. Okay, then. So you've watched a lot of stuff that's take place within, like, the main continuity, mostly either during, slightly after, or slightly before the 1 Year War. But as you start to explore more of the Gundam universe, you'll notice that there are a lot of stylistic, I forgot what the proper word is, but there are a lot of callbacks to these early designs. Obviously, there's the Gundam, most of these Gundams would have the V-fin on their forehead, the samurai helmet and mouth plate, the vents on either side of their chest, the beam swords, the shields, yeah. As you go ahead and move forward, you'll notice that the majority of the bad guy or the antagonist's mobile suits all carry the cycloptic eye theme.
Oh, yeah.
So that is one thing that, like, that's a stylist, that's like a stylistic choice that carries on even to this day. So going over, I do want to say, have you seen the original concept art for the Gundam? Not so much like the gray version, but previously when it would have been called Gunboy.
Oh yeah, I have seen the original concepts for the Gunboy. I'm not so much as well as some of the original concepts for the Gun Tank and Gun Cannon as well.
Ah, okay. I'm not so much fan of the, like, I feel like this is, like, the version of the Gunboy where it has, like, blue arms and legs and a red helmet and torso. I feel like here, like, the color sort of overpowers the design. It's a little too busy.
There's like a bit too much going on, like with the Gunboy design, that it doesn't really make it all that memorable.
Yeah, and for me, it just looks too derivative of what was popular at the time. You look at Combattler 5, you look at Voltes 5, you look at, what was that other one? Maybe Daitarn, I think it was Daitarn 3, I could be wrong, but there was another show that Tomino worked on that had this similar color scheme. But yeah, it just looks too derivative. Meanwhile, like, the more white version is something that is more unique and, kind of helps the Gundam itself stand out.
He's unique because he's white on this.
God damn it! I can never win.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I probably deserved it. Remember, if it ain't white, it ain't right. I'm going to hell. Let's see. So I do want to find out what was that other show that Tomino worked on that had this design, but I do want to say, I want to say Daitarn 3, Zambot. It was Zambot 3. So Zambot 3, Daitarn 3, they look very reminiscent of this early design. The black design, I actually kind of like. It's sort of like it reminds me a bit of, like, what would become the GIM or the GM mobile suit design. But the black and red and gray, I'm feeling that. I like that. Although, it'd be a great opportunity for Bandai if they made modern-day Gunpla out of these early concept arts design. Because you know how we get, occasionally we'll get, like, Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that I would totally buy that.
Yeah, especially because, like, even for us Godzilla fans, we all were super excited when SH Monster Arts, or what they made that Noriyoshi Orai poster version of Mechagodzilla from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Like,
there was also that, I believe it was a Wonderfest exclusive, but it was a Sun Guts figure of the concept art or storyboard version of the original Godzilla, where he kind of looked more like some sort of aquatic dragon.
Oh yeah, I saw those pictures. Right. And even the Godzilla 2000 SH Monster Arts figure, it's actually based on, like, the poster that Shinji Nishikawa designed, where it has a more, like, dragon-like appearance as opposed to the version you see in the final film. So I can definitely see there. I know Gundam fans, they love, they eat all this merch up. So I'm sure they'd be interested in seeing, like, figures based on these, like, prototype designs, especially for the 40th anniversary. I'm surprised they never did that. Although I could be wrong, though. As for the gun tank and gun cannon, what were your thoughts on these two designs?
Okay, I really like the design of the gun tank. And it probably has to do with the fact that I am a bit of a Terminator fan, and the gun tank kind of reminds me of the T1, which is like that giant tank robot that you see like at the beginning of the first Terminator, and the flashbacks from Kyle Reese's point of view.
Right, I remember that one. Yeah, now that now that I think about it, it does greatly resemble that design as well. It's like, it seems like the sort of like a humanoid torso on top of a set of tank treads is like a design that is, it's like a classic design you'd think of when you think of like military robots or Johnny Five, either way.
And I also really like how I also really like how each of the mobile suits do like serve their own purpose, and I feel like the gun tank is a great example for that, because it's built for more long range combat. Hence like the giant like long cannons on its shoulders and the rocket launchers like on its arm. Whereas like the mobile suit, like the regular mobile suit, is built more like more versatile means of combat.
Indeed. You can definitely tell, like, in universe, the sort of progression from gun tank to gun cannon to Gundam. You can tell each mobile suit became more and more humanoid until they perfected it with the Gundam, at which point all future mobile suits, like the Gym, were based off of that design.
Oh yeah.
And I forgot to mention this as well, like the earlier before I like the qualities. I feel like while this was like the very first real robot, this was like sort of, many people in retrospect refer to the Gundam as like the very first real robot anime. I feel like there's a lot of like with the way the Gundam is written, it feels still has some ties into its like it ties to its super robot brethren. It does feel a bit like a super robot, given how significantly stronger it is when facing off against the earlier Zeon mobile suits, where it just has this overwhelming power, durability, crazy amount of weapons at its disposal. But I love how they handle it, because they don't make it so overpowered to where it's invincible, but rather Amuro learns to not rely so much on its capabilities, but must get to the point where the Gundam starts to rely on Amuro's capabilities later on. He has to rely on his own skill on top of the Gundam's power. And even then, the gun cannon and gun tank serve vital roles in the white base team's fight against the Zeon, because you can't just, unlike say a future installment like Gundam Wing, you can't have a single mobile suit just go up against like an entire army of grunt units, or rather, if you have like the Gundam try to do everything, it's going to get its ass handed to him. So it's much more interesting to see these characters come up with these strategies that allow them to use all three mobile suits' strengths and weaknesses in order to back up the Gundam, in order to take care of the problem ahead of them.
Oh yeah.
As for the Zeon mobile suits, I would say, yeah, they're equally entertaining. It was sort of a first for the time, I believe, where usually, they went for the whole Monster of the Week deal. So it was sort of interesting. I wished I would have known what it was like back in the day for them to say, oh wow, it's the 5th episode and they're still fighting the same robot again. And but I do like that. For a while, it's just Zaku's that they're fighting, and even some earlier models of Zaku's, which are the Zaku 1s. They have like blue arms and legs, to show a bit of like, hey, a significant amount of time has passed to where newer versions of these older mobile suits are being produced. It's not until we meet Ramba Ral do we get our very first variations in the form of the Guff, and by then we slowly introduce the Doms, and then the Gelgoogs, and eventually the Zigok, yeah, or the Act guys, and eventually your lead all the way to like the big Zams and your Zongs. So it's a very nice progression, a very nice escalation of power, for our heroes.
And like to add to that element of the escalation of power, I can't help but feel like every time like a new mech appears, it feels like an event of sorts.
Oh, totally. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh shit, it's this new unpredictable factor. So how are our heroes gonna deal with this now? How are they gonna face off against this new strategy? Although I will say this, maybe my least favorite. It's not really so much a mecha, but my least favorite mechanical thing in this original series is probably the Zaccarello. Most people probably won't even remember it, or if they do, it's because of how silly it looks. Like, it's too silly. It gets too silly even for me, I think. Do you remember the Zaccarello?
I do not remember the Zaccarello.
Okay, so there was this one Zeon soldier. He gets this old experimental weapon to single-handedly fight the white base, and here it is. I found an image of the Zaccarello. It's this big dumb-looking ship with a viper face on it on the front that's yellow.
Oh, that.
Yeah, I just sent you a link to the image right now. Yeah,
that's. I don't know what to think of that.
I get a feeling that this was probably like a design made by like one of the animator's children, and he wanted to sneak it into the production, and it only appeared briefly, so maybe it was like, okay, now I can use my son's design just for him. I will say, this is not the worst design we've seen out of the entire Gundam franchise. You can find half of the worst designs out of, like, G Gundam. But yeah, for me, personally, it's silly, so maybe it has some charm, but that's my least favorite. Everything else, I'm pretty good on.
Okay, I am going to build a new spacecraft for this faction. It needs to have a giant face on it.
And tiny little arm blades for space combat. No, everyone is using lasers and rocket launchers and shit, but no, I got knives.
And teeth.
And teeth, yes. Moving ahead, what were some of your favorite designs from the Zeon faction?
I definitely loved the Guff and the Gelgoog. I'd say those two were definitely like my favorite mechs from the Zeon faction.
Oh yeah, totally. I love like the Guff mainly because, you know, I love, you know, blue is my thing, you know, especially if you've seen my own original comic character. Yeah. And Ramba Roll just helps sell the introduction of the Guff as well. What do you call it? The Black Tri-Stars, they also do a good enough job at introducing the Doms as well. But there's something about like the initial fight between Amuro and Ramba Roll that just sells you on the power of that Guff. And I'm surprised that like electric whips aren't used as often in the Gundam franchise, though maybe I could be forgetting a few here or there.
I just really love like the introduction and first fight with the Guff like all together.
Mm-hmm. For instance, once they introduce the Guff, it's just Ramba Roll himself. But then as we go later on in the series, you start to see more of the Guff. And at that point, you're like, oh shit, they barely could fight one. So how are they going to deal with this now? Yeah, again, it goes back to that whole escalation of power thing. And, I do have to mention the Zaku. You know, they're super iconic. You know, they're a staple of the original Gundam series. They're absolutely classic designs. And of course, Char's mobile suit is, you know, it's an absolute joy to see that thing every time it kicks ass and is able to make a jump out of Amuro. It's also very interesting.
Kicking him in the balls.
Kick him in the balls, yeah. The Char kick, which itself has sort of become a bit of a meme within the Gundam franchise. And it's also kind of interesting how it's basically colored pink in the original series, and yet in all future Gundam installments like the Origin, it's recolored red. So it makes me wonder, was it trying to go for red back in the day, but pink just worked better from an animation standpoint, or did they just change their mind saying
I feel like that's what it is.
A
lot of pink in this anime.
That is true. Maybe they had some extra pink left over. It's like, well, we have all this pink, might as well use it. And right now I'm thinking of like, I think it was the character...
Pink explosions.
Yeah. Now all I can think of is just... now, pink spacesuit for Char. Now, at the moment, I'm thinking like Char is like constantly telling his soldiers, "It's not pink, all right. It's light red. Shut up."
The red comet, more like the pink comet.
And next thing you know, you're gonna find yourself like anyone who makes that joke in within the 1 year war, they find themselves with like a giant pink Zaku right outside their quarters. Like, I heard you was talking shit.
Oh shit! I think I see something outside my window.
And you hear the. I imagine I hear the noise of a cycloptic eye glowing. Bwom.
Yeah. Wait, what's that music?
Let's see. And what were your thoughts on like the final design for like the Zong?
The Zong.
Zong. I think Zeong. It's really hard because the katakana is like Jeong, but I know that's just Japanglish right there. It's the final mobile suit that Char uses that was incomplete. It didn't have any legs, but because it was in space, it didn't need legs.
Yeah, it's a strange design.
Yeah.
Mostly due to the fact that it doesn't have legs.
Right. Funny enough, there is what they call the perfect Zong, or perfect Zeong, which actually has legs. Although, for whatever reason, like one of its legs has arm. It's like if you look at the Zeong, one of its arms doesn't have any armory, so you can see like exposed circuitry. So for like the perfect Zeong variation that exists in like books and Gunpla, because of course they would make Gunpla out of it. It doesn't have any armor on one of its legs either to kind of match with the arm as well.
Doesn't sound perfect to me.
Wait a minute, I think I hear some trumpets again. And this is an image of the perfect Zeong that I'm sharing with TitanGoji right now. So tell me, does it look more weird or less weird with legs?
Well, it definitely looks less weird. But it doesn't look perfect.
It's a work in progress. Or at least it was. All right, and let's see. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to bring up in terms of the robots before we get into spoilers?
Wait, the purple ones were called DOMs, right?
Right, the DOMs, yeah.
Yeah, I thought those were pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also kind of like how like the shape of the head is different than a good majority of like the other Zeon mobile suits, where they kind of look like they almost kind of look like diving helmets. This one, it's kind of has like a cross on its face with a little cycloptic eye at the center of it.
Oh, that's true. Right, yeah. It does have a very unique helmet design that does help him stick out. I also like how bottom-heavy the Dom looks like in comparison to the more humanoid shapes of the other Zeon mobile suits. So it's like the top portion is like very small, but then it gets wider as you go down the body.
He's dummy thick. I also really like how like the colors blend in together.
Oh yeah, that is very true as well. The black and purple work very well together, and I can see a bit of like the Dom's influence on like the Zeong's design here.
Let's see, what other mobile suits should we talk about?
Oh. There's one part that I wasn't so big a fan on. It worked in context for the story, and that was like, I think it was called the G Defensor. It was just this giant purple ship that would attach to the Gundam, and so whenever the Gundam needed to like fly around faster, it would sort of get on board with the G Savior. No, that's another thing. The G Defensor. it would get attach itself to the G Defensor. The front half attaches to the head, the back end attaches to the feet, and it carries like two shields with it, and then the front half and the back half can combine to form its own unique ship. It was that one part where it felt the most toyetic, to borrow some terminology from Joel Schumacher. And yeah, apparently Tomino wasn't a fan of the G Defensor, so by the time he remade the series as 3 movies, he completely replaced it with a new ship altogether that could combine with a core fighter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think they also removed the Gundam Hammer, which was that giant spiked rocket-powered mace that I absolutely love. That I have no problems with, no matter how silly it may be. It's like, we have all these like lasers and bazookas, but a chain ball, spiked ball is all you need to whoop some space Nazi ass.
Oh, that.
Oh, and how can we forget the beam saber, you know, the totally not lightsaber for the Gundam universe. Because in case you didn't know, Star Wars just came out 2 years prior.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else you want to mention before we head into spoilers?
Let's see. I also really like how like the gun cannon gets on all fours before like firing like the cannons.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, like I don't know what it is about it, but I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, I can see that. I would say I'm not so much as big of a fan of the gun cannon and gun tank. I mean, they serve their purposes perfectly, but I think maybe that's how they were made. They were designed to be have more subtle, less detailed designs in order to make the Gundam stick out more.
Right, and I also feel like when you have something like the gun cannon or the gun tank, it's always like a good idea to have like a different mechs with a specific purpose.
It's also interesting to note that in future Gundam shows, they start to rely less and less, at least in terms of like the main protagonists, they often use less and less non-Gundam mobile suits and actually start to use other Gundams. So it's like by Double Zeta, they start to form a Gundam team as opposed to one Gundam and a bunch of non-Gundams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is sort of like one of those very rare shows where there is only one Gundam, and this is also the very first, the only show that, not counting the OVAs, that feature just one Gundam throughout the entire series. Usually, starting with the sequels, Zeta Gundam, you start to have a protagonist who would upgrade to a new Gundam halfway through the show.
Oh, alright.
Yeah, so this show has a lot of things that do make it unique from future installments. Alright, so before we go into spoilers, I do want to say, you want to give your overall thoughts on the series and whether or not you would recommend it.
Matilda gets her head shot off, and that's fucking awesome.
That's not a summarization, man. It's the exact opposite.
I've been saving that for the entire review up until now. I really wanted to bring that up.
Okay, so for anyone who's interested in getting into the original Gundam, someone gets their head fucking blown off.
With a plasma rocket launcher.
With a plasma rocket launcher in space. If that's not enough to get you into Gundam, I don't know what will. If it's not the space Nazis, if it's not Star Wars with World War II Star Wars with mechs, if it's not freaking, colorful robot model kits, I don't know what will, man. Alright, so yes, both of us would highly recommend Mobile Suit Gundam. I would give it a perfect 5 out of 5, even with its dated animation and technical mishaps. For me, it's still a perfect show. It might not be for other Gundam fans out there, but for me, it has everything I'm looking for in a Gundam show. And even like all these years later, after I first saw it in high school, like roughly 10 or maybe around 10 years ago, it's still an amazing piece of entertainment, and I can see how just why it wouldn't be as influential as it was to Japanese entertainment if it wasn't so good of a series. And just talking about it, just if you can't tell by like the hour and a half we've spent gushing about it, why it is like sort of like a quintessential mecha anime. So yeah, I would give it a perfect 5 out of 5.
So as someone who is like a newcomer to Mobile Suit Gundam, I was totally impressed with 0079. I really loved how it handled its world building and its characters, and I also really like how it progresses with the whole like escalation of power as like new mobile suits start appearing. And I also really like how it does go more into themes relating to anti-war and what the effects war can have on the people who are involved with it, and and just overall it's a timeless classic in my book.
Absolutely. So, going into the characters, this is going to be spoilers from now on, because even though I feel like we could have talked about the characters in a non-spoiler section, I feel like just to have a full conversation, I feel like we need to get into spoilers here. So, going into Amuro Ray, I feel like, yeah, he is definitely sort of like, again, another quintessential, very emotional, young, energetic teenage boy. He's not like Koji Kabuto from like Mazinger Z, where he's just like ready to fight against injustice, and he's not someone who's like super willing to go headfirst into battle. Like, initially, he does have that drive, that spark to protect his family, his friends, his loved ones when he initially gets into the Gundam to fight off those two Zakus. And eventually he sort of has his back in a corner where he's forced to eventually fight not just for the people he cares about, but he has to fight for people he knows nothing about. He has to fight for the entire safety for the sake of the entire Earth Federation. And he says like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. It's like, why do I have to do this sort of thing? And eventually he realizes that he kind of has no choice in all of this. And even when he tries to leave, he tries to get away from it all, he ends up finding himself stuck in a situation where it's like, no, I can't abandon my friends and what little family I have left. It's like, I'm in too deep and I can't walk away with this because, he's got that sort of guilty complex.
And I'll also want to add to that, that like the first time you see him backed up into a corner in the first episode, his response was to pilot the Gundam and defend himself.
But eventually he becomes a less selfish individual. He starts to mature more, but along the way you see him going through all the struggles that a soldier his age would go through. You can see him clearly going through PTSD. You see him struggling to cope with all the shit that he goes through. There's times where he has these emotional highs and lows.
It's like he doesn't really want a part of it, but he has no other choice, like you previously mentioned.
Right, yeah. He almost loses his mind to the point where it's sometimes he cannot even he can't socialize anymore, and he only feels comfortable when he's out there fighting. The fighting is merely a distraction from the nightmares he has after these fights, in the aftermath of these fights. He feels very bitter towards himself and the people around him, towards the world. It's just, he goes through so much mental anguish. It's truly fascinating to see this type of character kind of fall into this slump, but as time goes on, it's sort of like this evolution of where he becomes a true soldier, where he eventually finds a cause worth fighting for, and he ends up sort of in a way, the people around him sort of become his family by the end.
Oh, yeah.
By the end of the series, we don't know, of course, me watching the future Gundam shows, I know what happens to him, but in context of this one anime alone, we have no idea how Amuro's going to end up. But the fact that he feels at most comfortable with those that care for him kind of shows that as the series goes on, yes, he's not the same person anymore, but at the very least, he's got people who has been to hell and back with him this whole time. And so as long as he's with with the people that he loves and cares about, the people that he himself has protected, then everything is probably going to be all right. Another struggle we see Amuro go through is, at one point he becomes so addicted to his being a soldier that he sort of almost like works like with a zombie like mentality. He's obsessed with doing things his own way, but it makes him a liability. There's a point where he just when he gets to his lowest of lows, he starts to kind of sink. He starts to become so entrenched in his work that it's like he can't do anything else. He doesn't feel like a human anymore. He feels like a machine that's just working day and night. In those points where it's like
he has become a Gundam himself.
He's become a Gundam. It's really funny you should say that, because there's a protagonist in a future Gundam anime that constantly shouts, "We are Gundam," or "I am Gundam."
I also want to go back to the episode where Amuro reunites with his mother. And and how you start to see the effects of war, kind of taking over Amuro. There's if I recall correctly, Amuro ends up shooting someone, right? In front of his mother. His mother is just shocked, and he explains to her, "This is war. This is the way it is." Like that hit hard, man.
Oh yeah, totally, man. I mean, I personally don't know anybody who is in the military or has had that sort of had to deal with that sort of transformation, but within the context of this show, it does feel like a very realistic transformation that he goes through, to where at first he wants to get away from the violence. Here, he is fully embracing it.
Oh yeah.
And earlier before I mentioned, I feel like the show is really trying to focus a lot on Amuro and the bonds he share with these people, and how he goes through a lot of love and loss as he goes through this fight. He loses his close friend in the form of Ryu. He loses Matilda, he had a sort of high school boyish crush on her. Yet at the same time, he reveres her. He highly respects her for her wisdom and her experience. And so it's ultimately he's utterly devastated to lose her. He tries to see his father on 2 occasions, but his father has had brain damage, and he's more distant from Amuro now more than ever. So it's he doesn't really have a relationship with his mother anymore. His father can't talk to him like a normal human being anymore. The people that he looks up to die along the way. And, god damn it, what happened to Lala, is just, that's the epitome of Shakespearean tragedy right there.
Oh yeah. I also want to add to that how I also really like how the show depicts death if you ignore the fact that the character's name is in the name of the episode, right? Yeah, it's like the deaths of these characters come very and kind of just out of nowhere. Much like death in real life. Mm-hmm. Rather than in a majority of entertainment, death is always depicted as the slow, the person dying is in the arms of the person telling them that everything's going to be okay, you're going to be fine, and the person who's dying, "Don't worry about me."
Mm-hmm. Right. Here, it's there's no moment. It's almost like there's no moment for those final words. It just happens. It's unplanned. It's you don't see it coming, and now you're just left utterly shell-shocked and are forced to deal with the consequences that it brings.
Oh yeah, there have been a couple of times where I was just, did that really just happen? Right, yeah. They're still shocked in the direct aftermath of it. Yeah, they're just what just happened right now? Did it happen? No, it didn't happen. It can't possibly have happened. Yeah, I can also remember just being utterly confused by the death of the character.
Right. And with earlier before I mentioned there's Lala's sequence that's beautifully animated, and that was during her death scene. And it's upon looking at the sort of how these deaths have affected Amuro, it's like the more he goes through the middle part of the anime, Amuro almost becomes sort of like a very depressed, PTSD riddled mess. And what ultimately saves him, I think, are the bonds that he creates with these people. And with the development of his psychic powers, which are a thing, that is slowly introduced around the second half of the series. By the time his psychic powers start to emerge, he begins to be able to feel the pain and the emotions of other people. And
oh yeah, it's also one of those cases where it's like the more like he goes through, like the stronger he becomes.
Right. And when he forms that psychic bond with Lala, he's able to I guess you could call it convenient writing, because even though he doesn't interact with Lala a whole lot, it's through his like psychic links with Lala that he's able to immediately create this sort of personal bond with her, almost to the level that she has with Char in real in like a physical in real life. So he's able to see like such this beautiful, wonderful, loving, talented person that is Lala, and seeing her go, just sacrifice herself to save the person she loves. I could see that as, he's filled with pain, regret, turmoil, and as much as he wants to get revenge on Char at the end for putting Lala in that situation, whether or not he did, that's, there's two sides to every situation. But by the end, he uses his psychic powers to save everybody. So it's like no more, there's value in human life. I don't want to kill people at this point. I don't want to kill Char at this point. I don't want to take a human life. I want to save human lives. And I feel like that's where, a lot of that anti-war sentiments comes in through, not so much through, like, there's a lot of anti-war themes throughout this show, usually relating to death. But here it's like the conservation of life that kind of spreads a bit of hope, saying like, if we can understand each other the way Amuro understands Lala, then there is perhaps the glimmer of hope for humanity to survive.
If a lot of people love each other, the world will be a better place to live.
God damn it, Tommy.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
For Amuro, for Char, because I think in both cases it's gonna be pretty sad.
What a story, Mark.
What a funny story, Amuro. I did want to ask, so since this was your first watching of Gundam, what was your reaction to the concept of psychic powers and space ghosts in this series?
I thought it was pretty interesting. Like, I also saw it. I also saw it as like a way that this is the series that is definitely willing to push its boundary. And I'm not sure like how much in depth it is explained in the show, but I do remember seeing a video about like how during the Universal Century when they started colonizing beyond the stars, there has been this sort of emergence when it came to human evolution. So I thought that was a really unique way of implementing it.
Yeah. On one hand, it's world building that's pretty unique to Gundam itself, at least I feel. And on the other hand, it's also kind of a unique little inspiration, once again, from Star Wars. Because for me, when I initially saw the idea of new types, which is the name for people with psychic powers who are born in space, right, I started to see this as, oh, okay, this is your take on the Force.
Use the Force, Amuro.
Technically, he does, as he's able to predict. It's again that escalation of power, where the more enemies he's fighting, and once he becomes a full-blown soldier, he is then sent out on missions, and where he's fighting a whole shit ton of enemies. So he's now at that point he gets that sort of power up that allows him to fight off these enemies, and in a way, sort of makes him more and more of a soldier. And at some point, it sort of separates him. He becomes so entrenched in being a soldier. It goes back to that whole thing where he feels more divided amongst his peers, but by the end of the series, that sort of resolves where he comes back down to earth. Figuratively, not literally, although he does that literally earlier in the show. One thing I did like how earlier before it seemed like, Frau Bo was like his childhood friend. And I feel like had they not have become soldiers in war, it felt like Frau would have sort of been that sort of childhood friend who would grow up to become like a love interest in a typical high school slice of life anime. But
yeah,
as he becomes a soldier, he becomes more and more distant from Frau. And there's this touching conversation that they have near the end of the show where they're like, wow, we've really changed a lot since all this shit happened, huh? It's like, it's been a while since we had a decent conversation together. And at that point, you can tell they are already different people and that they're most likely not going to share a life together. And on the other hand, you see Amuro becoming more and more closer to Sayla once the two of them start going out on missions together. The sort of drama that happens between Sayla, Amuro, and Char is also, it kind of falls, again, it's that sort of Shakespearean drama that I have come to expect out of Gundam. And it's like, it's such a huge coincidence that his greatest rival is the brother to his greatest ally.
Yeah.
Only in anime, only in storytelling can that sort of coincidence happen. But it's a very nice, it ultimately builds up to a very satisfying climax as Amuro and Char are just trying to murder the fuck out of each other. As Sayla's like, hold on, you guys, please, for the love of God, stop fighting.
Yeah.
She's trying to remain to be like the peacekeeper between the two of them because she wants neither of them to die. Anything else you want to talk about Amuro before we move on?
No, I think we got it all covered.
Okay. So, moving on to his greatest rival, Char, or the greatest rival in all of anime, because I feel like if it weren't for Char, there would be no, stereotypical, no typical rival character in anime, because, Char has been, again, a huge influential character. He is potentially, even though, Amuro's the main character, Char is potentially the most popular character in all of Gundam, to the point where there's always what Gundam fans call a Char clone in every incarnation of Gundam. Every series has to have the masked rival who's very charismatic, a little mysterious.
Absolutely.
He's got to get on the main character's nerve. He's got to be that pinnacle, that height that the main character needs to overcome. And his introduction,
I really love that. I forgot which episode it was, but in one of the episodes that appears towards the end, it's just Char and Amuro just having a casual conversation with one another, and it's honestly one of the most tense moments in the entire show.
Right, because
just them having a normal conversation.
Right, because he knows that that's Char, but Char doesn't know that he's the Gundam pilot, but he knows he's a soldier. And it's like that moment where it's like, holy fuck, I'm talking to the Char himself.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's like Char, he's so charismatic, he's willing to help out Amuro. He's super, he knows he's the enemy, but he's so confident with himself and his abilities. He's willing to help him out, to talk to him and almost talk down to him in the most smarmy, douchebaggiest way possible. Cause I'm Char, I can get away with this.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite moment with Char in the entire show. And the second one being when he blew off Cassilia's head.
Oh yeah. It's like and that's a great thing with by having so much focus on Char, because even though he's a soldier, he believes in the cause of Zeon. He's got his own agenda going on, which is slowly revealed the moment he betrays Garma, because there are moments where it feels like Garma and him are old like college buddies. They're old chums, and then once he kills off Garma. That's the sad thing with Garma. Like, he didn't really want anything to do with the Zabi family. He was ready to leave the royalty and go off and have a life of peace with his girlfriend, but then like Char, he's like, well, sorry man, you're a part of the family that screwed my father over. Prepare to die.
I also really like how as the series progresses, Char gets new mobile suits, and
right,
and early on, they've already established how skillful he is when it comes to piloting these mobile suits. So it's like every time he gets a new one, him as a threat, it just feels more powerful because we already know what he could do with the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
What else can he do with this new one that he hasn't done? And that's also another thing about Char. He's really unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's essentially the loose cannon in all of this. You know, he's the unpredictable factor. And let's see. Oh, and I do like we early on, you know, there's the whole mystery that as soon I think it's episode 2 or 3, they established that there is a past history with him and Sayla, and as the story progresses, we learn that they are siblings. They are sort of like the royal family of Daikun Zeon, and he's on a quest for revenge. And so there are also tense moments with him and Cassilia, where Cassilia, she knows what he's trying to do, but she's trying to get on his good side to make him like her personal lapdog, which ultimately fails.
Yep.
And I do like the idea, you know, of him potentially have been this very nice, as you know, if we were to believe Sayla, he was this nice, very loving, caring brother, older brother, who just became this sort of like very cold, manipulative, murderous psychopath who's just on this like single-minded quest for revenge. The coolest psychopath, yeah. But I do like the interactions he has with Sayla. You know, he tells her, "Oh, I wear this mask to symbolize the fact that I casted my old identity away. I'm not the person you thought I was. You know, please, for the love of God, don't come near me. Don't be a part of this." Now, as much as he wants to go on this, you know, path of revenge, there is a sympathetic.
Stop! You're embarrassing me.
Come on, you're ruining my image. People can't know I have a young sister, okay? It's not as cool if I have a sibling. God!
There are no girls allowed.
No girls allowed. Except for this chick I'm banging, okay? But I do want to say, like, having Sayla there along with Lala later on, they do greatly humanize him and ultimately make him as much of a tragic figure as Amuro, to the point where it feels like Char is like a dark reflection of who Amuro could be if Amuro chose the path of going at things all alone and letting his more negative emotions get the best of him. Because it both feels they're both like two sides of the same coin. One of them strives to go at a path of revenge all alone. The other tries to go for sort of a quest of vengeance with the people that he loves there to back him up every step of the way. And it almost seems like Char may have had a chance to redeem himself, to let go of his anger potentially, you know, maybe perhaps live a life with Lala. But then, of course, you know, once Lala bites the dust as well, it's just all bets are off now. It's like, back to my quest for revenge.
Such lust for revenge.
It's like, once he lost his lust for women, it's now back to his lust for revenge. And there's not much more you can say about Char. He's charismatic, he's manipulative, it's all those things and more. He's got a charming side, he's got a terrifying, threatening side to him.
So that's why he's called Char.
Anyways, let's see here. So, moving on to, what would you say is a character you really enjoyed outside of Amuro and Char?
Okay, that's a tough one. Oh man.
Because for me, I really enjoyed Bright Noah, as he felt like more of like a surrogate father figure for this entire family aboard the White Base. It's funny enough, whenever I tell some of my students that my favorite Gundam character from the original series was Bright Noah, they're always like, why Bright Noah? He's annoying, he's angry, he's a grumpy. He's everything that is, he's everything that isn't Char. But I do like that,
So old.
He's so old, even though he's fucking 19. But yeah, he does, like, despite his age, he's sort of forced into a situation where he needs to be the mature one of the group. And even then, there are cases where he loses his shit. He occasionally slaps people he doesn't like. He loses his anger. He gets impatient. And I can see that comes with the burden of having to take on this role that he was never prepared for, but learns to become a leader along the way. And there are moments where he becomes very supportive of people like Amuro, like Sayla. I like the conversation, the one-on-one talk he has with Sayla at one point, where she reveals to him, it's like, yeah, Char is my brother. The small moments between him and Mirai, their like romantic interactions are very subtle, very brief, but also a bit touching as well. I love the part where, like, once Mirai meets her fiance, you can tell, like, Mirai Bright wants to beat the shit out of him so badly.
Yeah.
Like, you goddamn motherfucker, this time I'll show you how you would treat my goddamn woman. I mean, he's just mad jealous, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I do like that. He tries his best to take most of the burden on his back, and I remember there's a part of where he's so overridden with guilt over the death of Ryu. Like, once he starts getting sick due to, I'm assuming, him overworking himself, he's just constantly having nightmares, feeling like he is responsible for Ryu's death. And it's just like, he's trying to take on, he feels like he's responsible for everything and anything and everything that happens aboard White Base. So I've always appreciated that sort of leadership quality for Bright Noah.
Yes, I feel the same way.
I also like Kai as well. Kai is serves as a decent comic relief type character. I feel like he is like he is like the 70s version of what a real life shit poster would be like.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's an asshole. He's always reluctant to do anything. He's like a very trollish, very snivelly. He's very snivelly, he's cowardly, but I can tell, like, he's got a lot of, like, low self-esteem, so it feels like this was, like, his way of, his asshole-ish behavior was just his way of, like, lashing out the world before they have a chance to see him for what he really is.
Oh yeah.
But as the series goes on, I feel like I like his little mini story arc with, what was the girl? Miharu, the girl that the Zeon spy that sneaks aboard the ship. It feels like he made a genuine bond with her. And again, I feel like that storyline with her really helped mature him in a way. And in comparison with Hayato, I really wish Hayato had like a story arc like that, because I feel like in comparison, they don't really do a whole lot with Hayato.
Yeah. I personally don't. I personally don't remember him doing a whole lot necessarily. I do wish he was developed a little more.
Right. He needed to have like an episode or two for him, much like Kai.
Yeah.
What was it? There is a moment very late in the show where Hayato, he feels very upset over the attention that Amuro and the Gundam get. He's at the end, it's sort of revealed that he kind of has this sort of inner rivalry against Amuro. He feels like he also has like low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and he's like comparing himself to how ridiculously good Amuro is once he gets his new type powers. And at some point, he seems to get along with Frau, to where they do hint at somewhat of a romantic connection with each other, which, for spoilers ahead for Zeta Gundam, they get married and adopt the 3 orphan children.
Oh, okay.
So, like, you wouldn't probably even tell, but there's that moment near the final battle where Hayato is ready to head to the elevator with Kai and Amuro, but then he stops by to have one last chat with Frau before he goes off with the rest of the guys. But yeah, there's not much done with them, unfortunately. Ryu is another character where, he's kind of a bit of like not so much a comic relief character, but he's definitely more of like a more friendlier character. Sort of like he feels like kind of like an older brother kind of character for Amuro and the rest of the guys growing early on. And
I was about to say a Sam to Amuro's Frodo.
Yeah, pretty much. And he feels like he serves as like a great role model for Amuro. He's ready to jump into battle despite him not being all that confident with his skills. He's frustrated with Amuro's incompetence and takes charge whenever he needs to. He tries to keep everybody together. He himself even tries to mend the broken ties between Amuro and Bright. He's basically pulling everyone's weight together. He's trying, despite the fact that he's clearly not the best pilot out there at the start of the show, he's trying his damn best to keep everyone together, and it's sort of beautifully tragic that it's his death that does just that.
Oh yeah, like yeah. It was actually his death where I was like, wait, did that really just happen? What?
You don't kill the funny fat guy. That's not how anime works.
Alright, continue.
Let's see. Moving on, let's see. I feel like Mirai, she is like, if Bright Noah is like the father figure for this white-based family, Mirai is almost a bit of like a motherly figure. She seems very calm, level-headed.
I'm totally with you there.
Yeah, she acts as like Bright's confidant whenever he doesn't feel too sure of himself. She's the first person he goes to. She does have her own weaknesses as well. She at one point takes over Bright Noah's place as the lieutenant, but the pressure is just too great for her. She's worrisome. She overthinks everything. But there's that moment where Sailor kind of like takes charge instead of Mirai. So again, she's someone who is like out of her element, but she becomes more comfortable with the position that she's in. And there's this very interesting like pseudo relationship she has with what was the guy's name? Lieutenant Slager. There's that like a very the best way I can describe Slager is like sort of this like stereotypical jerk ass manly man type of person. Like alpha male. He's like an alpha male type personality. And yes, he is the Chad of the Gundam universe. He strides on in. He's like, "Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, how you doing? If you don't mind me." Yeah.
Also, just the fact that his name is Slager Law is enough to let you know this guy means business.
Right? Yeah. I thought it was kind of weirdly a bit random that Mirai is like attracted to this kind of person after a while. Like, I get like he leaves a bad first impression. Oh, okay, of course. Like Slager, he leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, but eventually he pulls his weight. He shows, hey, he's not just all talk. This guy can back up his words as well, and he has this very aggressive way of defending the people on White Base. When Mirai is dealing with her fiance, Slager comes in, is like, "Is this guy giving you any problems?" Just say the word and he's no more. But I guess it's like because he's willing to stick up for her that makes her attracted to him. But there's another touching moment in the series where Slager is like, "Listen, you can do much better than me. I'm a piece of shit. It's like, you don't need me in your life." And of course, one of the best characters in the show also has to die.
Yeah.
And let's see. I talked a bit about Ramba Roll. Ramba Roll is, again, another charismatic character. I would say he goes out like a champ, man.
Oh, yeah.
And even his wife is just as badass as him, which is something you don't really see in a lot of anime, where like you got this power couple that are equally strong. Frau, there's not a lot to talk about Frau other than she's sort of there to represent Amuro's growing detachment from the life that he used to have before the war. Other than that, she serves her purpose as mainly like the caregiver for the orphans and the people aboard White Base early on in the show. I guess she, along with the orphans, are there to show the constant presence of the victims of this war, and how showing just more standard people who get caught up in the war, not just me. Kind of like she serves the similar role as Amuro, Sayla, Hayato, and Kai. I guess for Lala as well, I did like her introduction where she begins with her watching this, I think she was watching this beautiful looking crane die in the rain as it drowns in like this lake, I think. And I think it's meant to be like a foreshadow to her death as this like innocent creature that dies a horrible fate that it didn't deserve.
Oh, yeah.
And let's see, and I like, there's a nice introduction. Amuro is instantly smitten with her. She appears to be sympathetic towards all beautiful things in nature. She has a passion for life. She's filled with hopefulness, positivity. That sort of thing really seems to attract both Amuro and Char to her. She has Amuro question his reasons for fighting. She mentions that it's very strange for him not to fight to defend anything, but to fight to be loyal towards his blind idealism of some kind. It's like she's the kind of person that really puts Amuro's mind into perspective and say, yeah, what am I fighting for? I don't have a family, really, so what exactly am I trying to protect in all of this?
Yeah.
So her introduction is really well handled, and her relationship towards Char and Amuro are beautiful and sad and emotional, every step of the way. Any thoughts you have on Lala?
No, I mean, I think you got it. You got it all down pretty much.
Okay, then. Oh, I guess I do have one more thing to mention. How in death she has almost this moment of clarity, where I guess it's established. Like this moment her death establishes that it is possible to ascend into a higher form of existence.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of. I think this might have been a concept that people have talked about in other forms of fiction, where when you die, your consciousness is able to escape the physical realm and is able to wander in space for all eternity. So they use that concept in here whenever people have like psychic powers that allow them to do such a thing. And I think she mentions how in her moment of death, she has this clarity as she's able to understand anyone and everyone through her psychic powers, bringing her at peace.
I thought that was a very very interesting and unique aspect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say it's one of the highlights of the entire show. The last people I want to mention are the Zabi family, and we got Garma, who dies early on, who is friends with Char. We have Girin, who's kind of like the main villain for the finale. He's the one who's like closest to Hitler, as they make direct comparisons to him and his way of taking advantage of people's emotions and getting them riled up to fight for the cause they think they believe in, when it's really more selfish, if anything else. We have Dozel Zabe. He's like, the big, giant, almost Frankenstein-looking dude who...
He's got such an ugly face. I want to punch it. That really want to punch it.
This is one of those cases where we mentioned before how like good people tend to act like we mentioned the Zeon people, despite being the bad guys, they humanize him. This guy's just a straight up monster with how they design him. And then we have Cassilia.
Huge piece of shit.
Yeah. And we have Cassilia, who is just very cold and manipulative. And with the exception of Garma, Giran, Dozel, and Cassilia, you can tell there's a lot of tension between all of them and their father, and that each of them is gunning for like the top position of the Principality of Zeon. Earlier, Giran even plans to reduce the population, maintain it with the superior races to find peace with the Zeon dictatorship after the war. I love how they refer to Hitler as being from the Middle Ages. That gives you a sense of like just how much time has passed in this world.
Oh yeah, I thought that was a really interesting and cool way to kind of let you know like how far into the future this is set in, like basically to the point where nowadays nowadays would be considered the Middle Ages like to them.
Right. I love how it's never established exactly when the AD era ended, so I feel like it's a really neat way of having your year take place in the future and never have to worry about when that year will come to pass. Although I think I heard in some canon or non-canon sources that the year 0000 UC may have started somewhere within the 20th century, like maybe around the 1990s, which clearly that's not going to happen if that's the case.
Yeah. It is the year 1990X. The world was engulfed in nuclear flames.
And at which point we decided to travel beyond the stars. Because that's clearly what happened in real life. But yeah, I feel like with the Zabi family, they do serve their role as being these dirty, corrupt, greedy, selfish villains. And yeah, it is very satisfying when
terrible
each
people.
Really terrible. What Giran does to his father is like, oh man, it's like you can't be a much dirtier bastard than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, they serve as great villains and great foils for our heroes, and they pretty much lead to one of the most satisfying deaths in all of anime, which you spoiled earlier: Cassilia's head getting blown off by Char's fucking rocket launcher. And also,
so great.
How did Giran not predict his death? Like he tells his sister straight up, "I killed our father." What did he think was gonna happen?
Yeah.
You see, Ramba Roll may have died like a champ, but Giran went out like a bitch.
Yep.
Okay then. So with this, I think we're now at a more appropriate time than ever to bring an end to our almost 2.5 hour chat on the original 1979 Mobile Suit Gundam anime. As we mentioned earlier before the spoilers, that it's a brilliant series. I feel like it still stands the test of time. If you're someone who has no biases towards older animation or older forms of media, I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of sci-fi, giant robots, war dramas, space operas, Star Wars, and or just are very curious to know what Gundam is all about, because I'm sure everyone has heard about Gundam in some way, shape, or form, I highly implore you to check out the original series. Even taking away, despite its huge impact on the franchise, taking all of that away, just on its own merits, it is such a beautifully written, well put together show that, for me personally, I will never get tired of watching. And what are your final thoughts, man? And I do want to know, having watched it as someone who is new to Gundam, and having this be your first Gundam series, what sort of impression did it give you on the franchise as a whole?
Okay, so going back to the comparison to Godzilla that you drew earlier,
mm-hmm.
I really like how this one pretty much laid the groundwork for all future Gundam shows that would come later on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I feel like the biggest thing Gundam has going for it is its world building, and of course being set in outer space, like many things can happen, and also considering the fact that it's going on during this huge war, I also feel like creating a world like this opens up so many opportunities for great stories and characters and whatnot. And other than that, I felt that this was a beautifully written series. I really love the themes, the characters, and most definitely the mobile suits.
Are you sure, man? Because I thought this was a show all about the characters. Okay, I'll drop it. I'll drop the running gag. All right then. And since then, you have gone on to watch the 80s and 90s OVAs. Just to give, would you like to give your brief thoughts on all of the 3 shows that you've watched, being as someone who jumped from the original series to the 1-year war-related OVAs?
Okay, so 0080, War in the Pocket. This one is probably like my favorite one so far, and it's how this one puts a lot more emphasis on the anti-war themes from Gundam 0079, and as for Stardust Memory and 8th Mobile Suit Team, I kind of put them on the same level. While they are both great and entertaining, they do have some rather corny aspects to it. But other than that, I don't think I ever really came across like a bad Gundam series. I've had a lot of fun watching all the ones that I've seen so far.
Very good, very excellent.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you decided to take this trip and start your journey into the world of Gundam. And thank you very much, man, for going on this journey, going on this retrospective look on the series that started it all 40 years ago. So where can people find you if they wish to follow you and your content?
Okay, so I also have a YouTube channel of my own called TitanGoji. That is TitanGoji! Exclamation point.
That the exclamation mark is important.
Oh yeah. and you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and you can also follow me on Facebook under the name Davis Madole. Last name is spelled Madole, and I would also plug my Patreon, but I don't know how that would sit with you, considering that this is on your channel.
Oh no, it's okay. I got no Patreon, man. And even if I did, I'm all for promoting other people's stuff, like your shirt business.
Yes, I also have a Teepublic where I make t-shirt designs. Please buy them. I only make like $2 to $3 per shirt that's ordered.
In fact, at G-Fest I purchased his Orochi the 8-headed dragon design, which I actually wore last night when I hung out with some of my friends, and they were like, "Oh, cool, what is that?" They're looking at the kanji. It's like, what does that mean? Oh, Orochi, that old thing. I know what that character is. I saw him in Persona. And then I tell them, "Oh, it's this design's based on a movie that my friend made. It's my friend made this based on a design based on a movie my Toho made." And they're like, "Ooh, I didn't know Toho made an Orochi movie."
There are 2 Orochi movies. One is from the 90s, called Orochi the 8-headed dragon, and the other, well, it's not really an Orochi movie, but it has Orochi. It's called The Three Treasures, and it's really boring.
Ain't life disappointing? But if there's any consolation, at least Gundam ain't boring. So, yeah, I'll definitely leave all your links in the description of this video below. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today on another installment of Gundam Mania. Please let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on Gundam 0079, or just Gundam in general. And so we wish the franchise a happy 40th birthday.
Gundam sucks.
Great! Go for it!
You shut the hell up, you're drunk.
That's a Godzilla reference for all you Gundam fans out there. So we wish Gundam a happy 40th birthday, and we wish for another 40 years more of amazing content that shows us that war is bad, but it looks so damn cool. So I have been Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir. This person has been
TitanGoji.
And until next time, everybody, take care.
See you guys.